Hello friends and music lovers, my name is Clive Swansbourne, welcome to Piano Insights. Today we're going to be looking at the last movement of Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata. It's a Rondo in C minor, and it has a very interesting Rondo theme, which I'll play right away and then we'll get into it. It's a very arresting theme, very dramatic, and full of lively emotional turbulence. It's not simple, it's not a simple theme, and Beethoven uses all his craft to get that effect in this music, I think. If you just look at the theme itself, it's full of activity, full of different ideas. It starts off with the first four notes that we find in the first movement. So here they are back again, not by accident. And another way that Beethoven unifies a piece is to bring it to interrelate thematic things from movement to movement, something that he did which no other composer had really done before him. And he, throughout his music, you don't find it in all pieces, but you do find it in quite a number of his pieces. And this is, I think, the first major example. Well, actually, Opus 2, number 3. Where you have in the first movement starts with that, and then the second movement, which is a totally different key, yeah, it's definitely thematically linked. Okay, so we have, he phrases that 3 staccatos and then smooth legato, and then here, so it rises up and then sinks and then up again, up even further, and this is the climax of the theme, I guess. Notice how he uses the same pattern in the climax of the of the slow movement, where he goes. Sorry, it's the same as. And then he ends up the theme here with a very contrasting sort of happy part. And the phrasing here is very important. At least not happy because it's still in the minor, but it's less intense. It's a nice way to end that part. And then he comes back. With this 2 phrases, and then again with this nice close there. Very important to use the right phrasing. For example, here is not. He doesn't slow those, but he does slow these. It's the same notes, but it's a more playful version of them. And then after that, on the very first line, we get. So that would be a mistake to go to chop them up. No, it's one legato line, and he marks it that way. He's very specific about it. Okay, so after just a quick look at the left hand. Look how interesting it is. A lesser composer, I think, would have invested less craft in this. Now, Beethoven uses all the powers in his imagination to make this sort of active and somewhat turbulent. Look how the left hand, instead of going, you could have just stayed on C minor, you see. He does stay on C minor, but he could have just stayed in that area, just continuing with the same kind of accompaniment. But instead he rises up and sinks, you see there, and has this new idea with using chords, broken chords there. Very interesting. And then here, notice how the right hand goes up, the left hand goes down, and then it kind of sinks into this note. So it's the first time that a pedal can be used with effect. Now here, whether to use pedal or not, you don't really need it. There's no time actually. So I'd recommend finger pedaling on here, because it might get a bit blurry if you use pedals. So I would use finger pedaling. Meaning that you're holding down. I think it's just more interesting. People might be thinking, why use finger pedaling at all? I think it's definitely more interesting to keep the harmonies sounding in the bass. It's more interesting than... That's too bare. Definitely bare. So this way you can pretend you're pedaling down here, but keep the phrasing here. That's a perfect way to do it. Here you can use a little pedal. You start off with the F. I like that because it's a kind of what I call a rhythmic pedal. Instead of just having... You have... You kind of... It's like a springboard to the last three notes. Rather than... Which is a little less interesting. Now here, we can have a nice use of pedal all the way through until the cadence here, because it's not going to blur anything. The scales are high enough in the scale that we're not going to suffer from any blurriness. And we can add the resonance that the pedal gives and bring out this beautiful bass line. Again, there's that beautiful F, that A flat that he loves. So gradual crescendo. Don't crescendo too soon, otherwise you'll run out of anywhere to go. Now this is, some people, they crash this chord. No. It's leading us into a more gentle part. It's actually a couple of transitional measures lead us into the new theme, which is dolce. It's very sweet. So this is the first little portal to that sweet part of the piece. So don't be violent with it. He puts SF piano. That's all that means, is to put an accent within piano. There's a definite, it's not even as much as if he put F piano, that would have meant play the chord loud and then have it soft, like the first chord of the piece, where we suggested doing that. So taking out a lot of the resonance of that. Here, that's not what he means. He just means a sforzando within a piano, SFP. And even that is somewhat loud, but I think it's okay. Very shapely on that. And then here we can use pedal. Just with the broken chord going up, and then lyrically come down without pedal. And another one here. Very shapely. So this shouldn't sound the same. And then here, down there as well, it's softer, you see. And here, very, very light pedaling. Don't over pedal here. Pedal every phrase, every change of harmony. here. We're coming out of the sweetness here. This is an E flat major. This is something that the first movement Allegro doesn't have. It doesn't have these dolce parts. It just is all steam ahead at all times. But he doesn't remain there very long. He's soon into the minor. So we're from here, almost immediately move to the minor. And when we do, start sounding agitated, and the crescendo as well. There's got to be a sudden change in mood there. So this very, that's where we get into the minor, and then the crescendo. Now he marks this piano, it's one of those subito pianos. But again, don't make the crescendo too late. That would be a mistake. Pull back a little tiny bit so that this doesn't get drowned, you see. And then these, nice and agitated on these. If you just go, it's not agitated, so these, like that. It's just a slight thing which really helps the feeling of restlessness. And here, very, very quiet, really. He marks the sound on that, but it doesn't have to be loud at all. It's a little bit of a zing, gives it the penetration it needs. Sort of gentle, it's playful along here. I think of children chasing each other and so forth. And then maybe the mother coming out and say, "Children, you've played enough." So this is very, very tender here. I see it as tender. So put the pedal down and he marks a slur. And the children hop back in the house for a cup of tea or something. Now here, it's beautiful to put pedal down on here as well. And then the phrasing here is very specific. Long, short, 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 long, short, 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 shortish. You'll find it very tempting, like a lot of my students, even my best students, sort of misread these very consistently. I have to keep reminding them it's not. It's a slur over two notes and then two staccatos. So long, short, short, short. Not long, long, short, short. It's a very common mistake, that. Has to be exact. Now here, another change of mood. He's actually... It's nice to bring out the top here. And pedal. Those are staccato half notes like he had in the first movement. So there shouldn't be... There should be more like those very, very slightly separated from each other. I think I crescendoed too early, actually. It only starts there. It's quite a sudden crescendo. That also loud, and then this soft. This is a slightly awkward place, but I would suggest circular fingering here. Either 3 or 2 here, and 5 here. Well then, that is not circular because you're using 3 twice, you see. Or 3 here, 5, 4, and now circling down. It's very comfortable. Once you get used to that kind of fingering, it's very useful in a lot of cases. It seems to me like the third of these is the more important one because it has to carry you through to the climax here. Don't be absolutely in time here. 1, 2, 3, da 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 da. That's kind of boring. No. Wait. And do I think a gradual accelerando through that. It's more of a cascade. It's more of a tumble than a measured out rhythm. Okay, then we're back to the Rondo theme again, and he then moves the piece into a different key of A flat major, which is the key he used for the second movement. I waited too long. So where have we seen that? Here it is again. And then again, not accidental. Now I like to think of somewhat serious this. All the excitement has calmed down definitely, and we're in a major key. We do need to shape these phrases. So we've got long notes here. And then in the middle of the phrase, it seems to me this is the crux of the phrase. So shape it that way. You don't have to do much of it. There's slightly awkward fingering here. You need to do a lot of sliding, so I would slide here. You could do a pedal each one. Just lift the pedal on every one. Not that one. 4-1, 3-1, 4-1. I've tried twos, but they don't work. The only two that works for me is on the F. Otherwise you're changing the hand position and so forth, and it's not really necessary. Here we get the end of one phrase and the beginning of a new phrase in the left hand. And then we get staccatos in the left hand. Now here I would use a finger staccato. Again, don't use the wrist. It's too much. You have to sort of dance the fingers, but keep the wrist in one place, like you would if you were just playing a scale. The wrist is the conductor of the arm weight into the fingers. And it works very, very minimally, on a very minimal basis, to help the arm down into the key bed. But if you start waggling it, that's too much. I mean, I always suggest that when kids or adults are learning scales for the first time, that they feel the arm weight go down into each note. And I tell them that once they've got used to that, it will happen automatically. So they'll be able to do and feel the arm weight without going up and down with the arm weight, but just to feel the arm weight and not to feel the arm suspended is very important. And here, it's basically, but it just means you have to escape the fingers more quickly. Now here, I like the lots of thumbs here, not using 4 here or anything. Using a kind of a standard chromatic scale fingering, I think is the easiest way to keep that hand free while doing these staccatos. Now you could either use no pedal along here, or you could use pedal on the, particularly up in the upper octaves. Maybe don't start with pedal here. Do think that you need pedal here, otherwise it's too dry. So just put pedal down on these, and I think that gives it a sort of a push rhythmically. Now these, you do need arm weight behind those because they need to be fortissimo. This is one of the big climax of the piece. Try and get your arm particularly behind those sandy at the top of the and so forth. And then the third reiteration of the Rondo theme is cut off. It goes in a different direction after this part. Notice, by the way, this wonderful where he comes up there. This is another example of his attention to detail. How is he going to add a little bit more agitation to it? Now, a lesson composer might have done. He would have just simply gone, stayed in C minor, whereas Beethoven does this on the weakest note of the phrase. He brings in the most spicy harmony up to that A flat, which he loves. This is beautiful, this part, where it's taken in the left hand now. That also is beautiful. If you remember, there's in the first movement, we have very similar part of the piece too. Suddenly the sunshine comes out, and that's the first time he had that in the first movement, and this is the first time we have it here. He marks dolce again here. It's just beautiful. It's like angelic children and angels and things, and a lot of playfulness along here, just like we had before we move back into more serious minor key stuff. So we're in C major here for the first time. Beautiful. So. Same kind of music going on here, but he experiments with it. He drives it into new harmonies. Instead of just having two phrases of this rather hymn-like thing, he then develops it into different keys. When I learned this as a kid, I got very confused with all where the ties were and so forth. So do be careful to get that right, because then we only have those two notes and the C is tied. And then we have three notes here, and then it turns to 4. D is tied. Then only 2 notes here, and then 2 notes here, and then 4 notes here. So it's not exactly the same each time, so watch out for that. His crescendo seems to go to this, which is interesting, more interesting than I think. And then we're into the final version of the tune. again, we got this. Here, I think we can do this rather than be soft there. We can be not quite so soft then, and then we can be soft immediately afterwards, you see. A good way to do this is sort of jump off it rather than land on it. No, push off it. So remember how we had in the first one, and I talked about whiplashing. Well, here's a version of that here. Just literally fling. I said don't cling, fling. So fling these out. It's a very exciting way to do it. It feels good. And then put pedal down there. For me, this is too dry. These ones are fine, but the first one, you really need that to. That's very much of an event in the music. So you do need to stress the fact that it's arrived at that cadence. Startling change of key here. I think it's a little dull to just go the same. No. Make it different. Make it more important. It is important. He's suddenly changing key from C minor back to A flat major, his beloved A flat major. And we've had plenty of A flat major before, and then he's back to there. So now here, just a little tip. Set yourself up down here before you even start the cascade. You won't be looking for it on the way down. Lots of time there. So he has a version of in A flat major for the first time. So almost tentative here. Pianissimo. It's like it's almost afraid to go back to C minor. What's going to happen when it's in C minor? Something violent, I expect. You're right. Quite determined at the end there. So a very exciting piece, very beautiful craftsmanship in this piece. Very subtle stuff going on. And the subtleties are a lot of the joy of playing this music. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe and share and press a like button. All of that helps. And I will hope to see you in other videos. Thank you.